African history is rich with stories of courage, resistance, and leadership, yet many of its greatest heroes remain largely unknown outside their local communities. Among these unsung figures is Mekatilili Menza, a remarkable woman from the Kenyan coast whose bravery and defiance against British colonial rule place her among Africa's most important resistance leaders. Her story challenges the common narrative that African resistance was led mainly by men or organized armies. Mekatilili led with conviction, cultural strength, and an unshakable belief in freedom, making her legacy both powerful and relevant today. Mekatilili Menza was born around 1860 in what is today Kilifi County in Kenya. She belonged to the Giriama people, a coastal community with strong cultural traditions and deep spiritual beliefs. Her early life was marked by hardship. She lost her parents at a young age and later endured a difficult marriage, experiences that shaped her resilience and independence. These personal struggles did not silence her. Instead, they strengthened her sense of justice and her refusal to accept oppression, qualities that would later define her leadership. At the turn of the 20th century, British colonial rule intensified along the Kenyan coast. The colonial administration imposed harsh taxes, forced labor, and compulsory recruitment of young Giriama men to work on plantations and infrastructure projects. These policies disrupted family life, weakened the local economy, and undermined Giriama cultural autonomy. The British also interfered with traditional governance systems, dismissing elders and spiritual leaders who had long maintained social order. For the Giriama people, colonial rule was not just political domination, it was an attack on their way of life. It was in this context that Mekatilili Menza emerged as a leader. Despite having no formal position of authority and no military backing, she became the face of Giriama resistance. Drawing on spiritual symbolism and oral tradition, she mobilized her people in a way that deeply resonated with them. Mekatilili invoked the spirit of Kifudu, a revered Giriama ancestor, claiming spiritual authority to speak and act on behalf of the community. This connection gave her words weight and legitimacy in a society where spiritual belief was central to governance and moral order. One of Mekatilili's most powerful tools was the Kifudu dance, a traditional ritual dance usually performed at funerals. She transformed this dance into a form of political protest. As she danced and sang, she delivered messages of resistance, urging the Giriama to refuse forced labor, reject colonial taxes, and stand united against British authority. Her performances were not entertainment. They were acts of defiance that spread resistance ideas across villages and strengthened communal resolve. The British colonial administration quickly recognized Mekatilili as a threat. Her influence unsettled them because it could not be easily controlled. She did not command an army, and she did not operate within the structures the British understood. In 1913, she was arrested alongside another Giriama leader, Wanje Wamwadori, and exiled to Kisii, hundreds of kilometers away from her homeland. The British believed that removing her from the coast would end the resistance movement. They were wrong. In an extraordinary act of determination, Mekatilili escaped from exile and walked all the way back to Giriama land. The journey covered roughly 1,000 kilometers, undertaken on foot through unfamiliar and often hostile territory. This return became legendary among the Giriama people. It symbolized not only her physical endurance, but also her unwavering commitment to her people's freedom. Her escape reinforced her status as a leader chosen by destiny rather than circumstance. Upon her return, Mekatilili continued to organize resistance. Although the British eventually used military force to suppress the Giriama uprising in 1914, the spirit of defiance she ignited did not disappear. Her actions left a lasting impression on the community and inspired future generations of Kenyan freedom fighters. While Kenya's later independence struggle is often associated with the Mau Mau movement of the 1950s, Mekatilili's resistance shows that the roots of anti-colonial struggle ran much deeper and included powerful female leadership. Mekatilili Menza died in 1924, long before Kenya gained independence in 1963. She did not live to see the end of colonial rule, yet her contribution to the freedom struggle remains significant. She demonstrated that resistance did not always require weapons or formal power. Cultural knowledge, spiritual authority, and moral courage could be just as effective. Her leadership redefined what it meant to fight oppression in an African context. Despite her extraordinary legacy, Mekatilili Menza is rarely mentioned in global histories of resistance or leadership. This absence reflects a broader pattern in which African women's contributions are minimized or erased. Colonial narratives often portrayed African resistance leaders as violent rebels or dismissed women as passive victims. Mekatilili fits neither of these stereotypes. She was strategic, articulate, and fearless, leading a mass movement without compromising her cultural identity. Today, Mekatilili Menza stands as a symbol of African feminist resistance, long before the term existed. She challenged both colonial domination and patriarchal assumptions about leadership. In modern Kenya, her memory is slowly being reclaimed through schools, cultural centers, and public monuments. However, her story deserves recognition far beyond national borders. She belongs among the great global figures who fought for justice and self-determination. In telling the story of Mekatilili Menza, we are reminded that history is not only shaped by those who held formal power, but also by those who dared to speak when silence was safer. She was not armed guns or titles, yet she shook an empire through courage, culture, and conviction. Mekatilili Menza is indeed an African hero you have not heard about, and one the world can no longer afford to forget.